start my quarantine off with a treatment for white spot, or any other protozoan infection. I would, in my experience looking after 500 tanks of fish, the first problems will invariably arise from an actual parasitical source. You will not see most of the parasites we use a microscope to actually monitor. You will see nothing. You will see very few things. You might see Argillus. You might see white spot itself. You will probably see the mucus produced by most of them. It's like fish will produce mucus in response to a parasite problem, so we might see that as an indicator of a parasite, but at that stage it's too late. It's also it can be caused by water quality. So the most important thing is a new fish, we debug it. And the reason we debug it is it's the same as letting your dog out for a walk, and your dog runs across the street, sniffs another dog, and it comes back with mites, ticks, worms. You know what I mean? People can get their head around dogs, or children with nits in their hair. They can understand parasites that way. But when it comes to fish, I mean, we have the same responsibility to make sure they're debugged. So what I do, when you get your new fish, it goes into your quarantine system. If you don't have a quarantine system, put it into your tank, but you have to treat the whole tank at the same time. And I usually use a good anti-parasite treatment, a good broad spectrum anti-white spot, and I would put my tank on it immediately, and I would follow up during this period. I would follow up with a good antibacterial treatment, because people do not understand that these parasites are microscopic. They're living on the mucus of the fish. I mean, they're leaving tiny abrasions. Maybe the fish are flicking to try and alleviate the parasite itself, the actual condition caused by the parasite. Sometimes the fish will wound itself. And secondary infections are invariably the biggest killer of our fish. I mean, the parasites are doing the damage, but the infection will kill them. So a good antibacterial treatment should reduce this to a minimum. So if you ever use a parasite treatment, make sure you use it in conjunction with a bacterial treatment. We find Melafix is probably one of the better things to use as your secondary infection eradicator. Let me see where I am on this. All the way through our quarantine time, you know what I mean? If you're going to use a chemical like an anti-white spot treatment, make sure there's no carbon in the system. Take the carbon away from your filters, because carbon will strip the chemical out of the water very quickly. So if you're going to treat your fish, remove carbon. Always remove your carbon. Throughout the actual quarantine period, which is 6 weeks, make sure you do regular water checks, especially if you've used a water treatment. If you're going to treat your tank, you can be sure that your treatment is going to have an effect on its environment, no matter what it says in the bottle. So test your water regularly. Carbon. Oh yes, and carbon, for God's sake. There's a big misnomer about carbon, especially when we meet customers who are coming in for replacement filters for their systems, and some of it may be a carbon sponge, and we'd ask them when was the last time they changed the carbon, and they'd say, well, 3 months ago. The guy in the shop told me 3 months. Do yourself a favour, every 4 to 6 weeks change your carbon. Now, depending on the grade of carbon, carbon has a tendency to become saturated, and then it can leach back into your water, adding to your water quality problems. So religiously, 4 to 6 weeks is the window we change our carbon. So let's get rid of that misnomer from the start. When we go on about 2 filter systems, it's not one filter with loads of little parts in it where you can clean it out. We're talking about 2 separate filter systems. I would use 2 filter systems on the basis that